I don't support a death tax. I don't think death should be a taxable event. I think that income has already been taxed twice. There's no reason why when a tragedy happens to a family, they should owe the federal government.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, we're going to another question here. This one for Congresswoman Noem. What's your position on cool country of origin labeling for the future?
Well, I believe that South Dakotans and people in this country deserve to know where their food comes from, and that's why I've always supported cool. And going forward, that's why we need to make sure that we keep a strong livestock industry thriving in this country. You know, we've got a lot of challenges in front of us, and we are proud of the products that we grow. I talked about the cattle herd that I had and how we work hard and understand that a family comes together to produce a calf crop that they can haul to town to be proud of and get a good price from. And they want the world to know that they did that they produce high quality beef going forward. Open transparency and more information for people is important. But I do want to touch on a couple of things that I think are important, and that's why you need a safety net. That's why you need a livestock disaster program. That's why we need to get our work done, and that's why we need a farm bill.
Okay, thanks a lot. Mr. Varilek, cool country of origin labeling, your position on that?
Yeah, I strongly support cool, even in the face of some opponents who want to try to weaken it now. And this is an issue that goes back a long ways. I still remember my 2002 Tim Johnson campaign t-shirt where it said "Keep Cool" on the back. This is something that a lot of members of Congress on both sides of the aisle have fought for a long time, so that consumers know where their beef is coming from and other livestock products, just like they know where their t-shirt comes from. I strongly support that. Likewise, I support livestock market reforms that would protect smaller scale livestock producers from market manipulation by the big meat packers. I think we need to do that. Now, in the House version of the Farm Bill, unfortunately, there was an amendment added during that committee process that the livestock groups view as very unfriendly to country of origin labeling. It could provide an opportunity in the conference process to open up the whole book on country of origin labeling. I think that's a bad idea. I believe my opponent voted for it, and we ought to get that out of there so we preserve country of origin labeling and keep on implementing it.
Label?
Well, yes, I would like a quick rebuttal because Matt's wrong. That amendment talks about cool and also talks about the fact that we have to balance USDA compliance with WTO regulations when we implement cool. So what that amendment does is it says that we recognize the valuable trading partners and relationships that we have with Canada and with Mexico, and we don't want to jeopardize that while we put cool into place. So all it does is to make sure that we have compliance with those regulations so that we don't hurt some of our exports and in turn hurt our livestock industry.
Well, I agree that the explanation, if you just read it to your eye, it looks pretty innocuous, but all the livestock groups are very worried about it because they say it's going to open the door to gut cool, and that's a bad idea. We need to protect it.
Okay, we're going to move on here. This one question for Mr. Varilek. In what provisions in the Senate version of the Farm Bill that aren't in the House bill would you like to see become law? What provisions in the Senate version that aren't in the House bill would you like to see become law?
Yeah, in many ways, the Senate version, I think, is far preferable to the House version. And the main reason is because it passed, and the House version hasn't passed. But in terms of particulars, the safety net provisions for commodity producers are much more favorable to corn and bean producers in the Senate version. And we can thank Senator Thune and Senator Johnson partially for that. In the House version, it's far more tilted towards peanut and rice producers in the South. And so I think we ought to improve on that. The House version has amendments that are harmful to GIPSA, those livestock market reforms I talked about. It has this cool amendment that I think is bad for livestock producers. On the biofuel side, it has a provision in the House that says USDA can no longer spend money under the REAP program for ethanol blender pumps. The Senate version doesn't have that. I think we ought to prefer the version that's in favor of ethanol. And so that's just one of several reasons I think the Senate version is preferable. But regardless of some of the shortcomings in the House, the most important thing we can do is get that House version passed so we can get it on to the next phase of the process, get those things improved upon, and resolve the uncertainty.
Okay, thank you. Congresswoman, provisions in the Senate bill that may not be in the House version?
Yeah, you know, the two bills are very different, and they're different. They're products of the people who put them together. I will say that I like the commodity title of the Senate version. It works much better for South Dakota than the commodity title in the House version. We offer a choice of supplemental crop insurance coverage in the House version, but essentially it gives a little bit more protection to southern growers, where my only concern is how you fare in our farm bill as we put it together. So the commodity title as well, out of the Senate bill, I am very favorable towards and like it. That's why we need a bill to conference, to bring the two bills together and to come up with a final version that's good for South Dakota. I'll tell you what disturbs me about the Senate bill is two different things. First of all, what it does is it ties crop insurance to conservation compliance. That opens up the door to having a lot of people's safety net that they depend on, crop insurance, being jeopardized because of an arbitrary decision on some kind of conservation compliance into the future. We don't want to start down that path. That's the only safety net that our farmers have to depend on when they're in volatile situations like the drought that we have. And so that's why I don't like that, and my determination, I'm glad it's not in the House bill, and we need to get it out when we conference the bill. The last thing is that we have to recognize that this country is going bankrupt. We can't continue to spend and spend and spend and think that it's not going to come home and that there's not going to be consequences. The reforms we put into the food stamps bill make sense. They make sure that the people who need the help get it, and it adds integrity to the program. And I think that the House and the Senate should agree on those and make sure that they go forward.
Quickly?
Yeah, just to add on that a little bit, let me say on the nutrition programs, the Senate version makes $4 billion in cuts, and I think it would help to make sure that we aren't giving that assistance to lottery winners and other folks that would abuse the program. But the level of cuts that are in the House bill go far beyond that. All the analysis that I've seen says it would actually remove assistance from people who truly need it, including lots of kids. And I think that goes too far. Now, I agree again with my opponent that we do need to get this bill passed and on to the conference process, and yet I still can't understand why she isn't willing to be aggressive and support this effort to force a vote on the Farm Bill. She says she wants to wait until they get back to D.C. to see what the lay of the land is, but we're getting really close to September 30th here, so I think the time is now. And as I mentioned, there has been some indication that she flip-flopped on this issue because of pressure from the Speaker of the House. And I would like to ask very directly on behalf of the people that ask me, is it true that you changed your position because of pressure from political leadership?
Absolutely not. It's absolutely not. You know, most people, and I know you've spent more time in Washington than I have, but I will tell you that the process is the discharge petition isn't available until September 15th. So we can't, none of us, nobody from either party can do anything on a discharge petition until it becomes available. That's when we're back in D.C. That's the time frame. As soon as it's available, I'm signing on and championing bringing that farm bill to the floor because it's that important for South Dakota.
Well, that's news right there, folks, because up until now she had not said she was going to support it. And I think that's a good thing because we can no longer wait.
All right, this is what you want. You want a debate.
We're having a good debate about important issues right here. I think it is important to support it now, and your friend Rick Berg, who was here recently, said just that he does support it already, so I'm not quite sure why we want to wait until 15 days remain until the bill expires.
Okay, next question goes to Congresswoman Noem. Do you support biotechnology in agriculture, and how would you help get new ag products to the market in a timely manner using biotech?
Yeah, biotechnology has changed the way that we grow our crops in this country, and it's been very beneficial to making sure that we can keep families on their farms. So I do support biotechnology. I think that it's great and that we need to continue to invest in it. And we've seen a lot of private companies step up and do that as well. A lot of times people think the government is the answer to everything, and the government simply slows things down and makes it more cumbersome and even can make things worse at times. The government needs to support it. It needs to make sure that we are making biotechnology and new research and new development investments important, but there's a role for the private industries to play as well, and that we need to make sure that we get those through the process and implement it so that we can benefit from all of those processes going forward and raise better crops and more crops, because we have a growing population that's going to be hungry if we don't keep our farmers and ranchers on the farm and doing what they do best.
Thank you. Mr. Varilek, biotechnology and ag?
Yeah, I think biotechnology is very important in terms of developing seeds that are more resistant to drought, for example, like we're in now, and all sorts of potential applications that we can only imagine. And I would say it's a false choice to say that it's only the private sector or only federal investments or other public sector investments that make a difference here. They should go hand in hand. We shouldn't have to make that false choice. And SDSU that's sponsoring this debate is a great example of that. There is all sorts of wonderful private sector activity going on at SDSU, but it's done in partnership with the public sector component coming from state government and the federal government. We need to be willing to make that public sector investment in order to leverage it with the private sector so that we develop these wonderful technologies that help us all in our economy. Now, if we're going to defend tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires, it makes it harder to be able to find the resources for that important investment like we have at SDSU, and that's a key difference between my opponent and me. I think we need a balanced approach to tackling our budget deficit instead of defending the tax breaks and forcing even deeper cuts on important things like research at SDSU.
Chairman, let's get a rebuttal. The hour's going quick here. Go ahead.
I want to respond to the millionaires and billionaires comment. The proposal that Matt is supporting, that the president has put forward, would raise taxes on individuals. 95% of the businesses and small businesses in South Dakota file their taxes as individuals. There's a recent study that came out by Ernst & Young that said that by doing what Matt wants to do, that we would lose up to 2,200 jobs here in South Dakota. That would be devastating. I don't know how you look at families and say, because I want to tax you more, you're going to lose your job and you're not going to be able to take care of your family. And that's why I don't support the tax raises that he does. I don't believe that our small businesses should be jeopardized in that matter, recognizing that the way that they file their taxes shouldn't be a penalty, that we shouldn't pick winners and losers, and that's what's wrong with our government right now. We need a flat system, a fair system. We need to get rid of loopholes and exemptions. I wholeheartedly agree. We need to get the government out of the business of picking winners and losers.